Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's excited to talk about Sipho and his new album, And God Said. First of all, this is the first official introduction of Thunderground Thursday. It happens to be that my Thursday show ends up being things which are a little bit less known. I know a lot of people watch my channel to hear me talk about things that they already like or they're already interested in, but I also hope people join me in my journey as I sort of scour the earth to try to find new and interesting music. In this case, I'm reviewing Sipho, which is spelled S-I-P-H-O, period. And it's important that you have the period there because there are a lot of different artists who go by the name of Sipho. This was confusing to me, but it was made less confusing when I realized it's actually a fairly common first name in Xhosa, the language from Southern Africa, in one of the languages of Southern Africa, which means God's gift. That's what Sipho means. Apparently his last name also means little elephant, so I don't know, that's a very poetic name. I like that a lot. But he's not from Southern Africa, maybe his roots are. He's from England, in particular from Birmingham, England, which, you know, one thing I like about music in general is you just hear the name of a place, and at least for me, I just associate music with it, right? So, you know, if you say Seattle, I think of Hendrix, and then I think of, you know, Nirvana. You say Birmingham, I just think of Black Sabbath. So it's really nice to have a very different image of this area of, I guess, the Midlands, with Sipho, who also goes by Sipho the Ism. Now, I will tell you, on this Thunderground Thursday, is that a stupid name for it, by the way? Put in the comments. Is Thunderground Thursday too stupid, even for me? In my research, I found like a lot of really good interviews with him, but that had ridiculously low views on YouTube. Like, there's one 45-minute interview that had like 13 views. There's another like 15-minute one with like 100 views. And yeah. Go check it out. This guy, the way he comes across in his music is the way he comes across here. Very charming, very self-effacing, very likable. Like, I was watching his interviews, he talks about how he used to make rap, but now he just sort of makes sounds. And he just comes across as very affable and nice. Like you know, like there's a certain kind of oddball charm to him, which I think could eventually get him a huge audience. Like, I really see him potentially having a huge audience because of that. It's a weird thing where I just, you know, on my big weekend show was on Tyler, the Creator, and I think that if you like Tyler, you should check out Sipho. They're not exactly the same, but they're both artists in the hip-hop and R&B realm who produce all of their own music and who sing or rap over their own music with a very kind of strange desire for acceptance and understanding, while also sort of understanding that you are almost impossible to be understood. One quote that I found from him in an NME article says that I love human fluidity. We are fluid as fuck. I want to celebrate my multiplicity and that of my brothers in my environment because they deserve to be recognized for more than one side of them. And if there's one overarching theme to this whole album, it is that. The idea that there's multiple sides to people, in particular, multiple sides to black men. That whatever image we have, often created through music or through popular media, is oversimplified, and that there can be vulnerability along with the strength, right? Which, as you know, is one of my absolute favorite themes in all of music. Anytime an artist can project strength through vulnerability, I think it's good for humanity. I just do. I think in particular, not black men, just all men. I think if all men can learn the strength that comes from vulnerability, there'd be less abuse and pain in the world. And Sipho and this album is pushing towards that. There's another aspect of this album, which is funny because it actually ties it a little bit in with the last review I did by Lucy Dacus, where he is a former or current Seventh-day Adventist, which is a very evangelical, Protestant, religiously somewhat orthodox, and from an outside perspective, odd faith. And this album is partly about the disillusion that he has with this faith, as he's starting to have a sort of a crisis of faith that is not angry. And it's a nice thing to see that actually ties it really well nicely with Lucy Dacus. People who are coming to terms with the paradoxes or the contradictions or the hypocrisy or even the evil of any form of religion, in these cases the Christian church, usually tied into greed. To come at that without anger, I think, is a very useful way to interact with it, as opposed to thinking like, these hypocrites, gotta burn them all down, just like sort of seeing everybody as a human and what are the mistakes that are made. Musically, I think this is like I don't know if this is my favorite genre blend. The way I think about it is like, I think he calls it industrial soul, and it is very soulful, but it's this, the term I like to think of is cracked soul. Like soul music is often very smooth and sung, but there can be soul music that's a little bit cracked, you know? So like if you can imagine like a nice smooth counter, right? Like a slab of marble, going back to Syracuse. A slab of marble, and there's just a little crack in it, and you just kind of hit your finger on it and go over it. That's the feeling I get from this style of soul music. And I think it's cracked by hip hop. I think it's the aggression, the posturing, the thematics of hip hop being integrated into soul, which can give it that power. Some other great examples of that, I would say, are Shelly. You know, I love the new Shelly album. And I would say Tyler, the Creator himself, creates a lot of cracked soul. I would say that's what Igor was for the most part. The only real parallel I can find to pre-hip-hop music would maybe be something like What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, where there's just a certain roughness to it that's also smooth. It's like emotionally raw, but somehow cooked. You know what I mean? So that's the feeling that I get off this album. If you like Shelly, if you like people who can rap and can sing, and can also produce all their own stuff, this is a really great album to discover. The cover, you see it back there, is pretty, I don't know, it's interesting. It's like him with his dyed hair. He has kind of dyed hair. I think he's trying to make himself more seen. Wearing these kind of prayer robes in kind of a cheesy bathroom. An interesting atmosphere that draws you into the album, and that shows this kind of spiritual strength, this sort of giving up, this sort of accepting. And it's amazingly dense. It's an EP. It's like 22 minutes long, but it feels like an hour. I'm not saying that like, it was 10 minutes long, and it was the longest hour of my life. I don't mean it like that. I mean like it's a very dense, enjoyably dense album. And again, just the fact that he's producing it all himself, it gives it an intimacy. You have the feeling of somebody who's just sitting in their room trying to make it work. Speaking of work, for every video that I do, I give you homework. This is especially important with artists that are lesser known, like Sipho. So I'm gonna give a link up here to the song and the video, Bodies. And this is a perfect example of what makes this album just so great. Super grimy guitar loop. Just always feeling like slightly off. This stumbling bass drum underneath. Kind of just staccato and unsettling all the way through. And then we have these synthesizers at the end and all these upsetting sounds and these like crickets. And then the way that he sings, it's just like his voice is cracking, his soul is cracking. It's like semi-gospel. He's tired and searching and screaming. Feel those bodies breathing. They know it's too late. All this, just this theme of like death and suffocation. And I don't know if this is tied into the global BLM movement or not. I don't think it matters. By the end, it gets really epic with these great sound effects and these crashing cymbals. And all the way through, there's just this great guitar loop. Apparently, he's sort of sampling some famous garage song, but I'm not English, so I don't know anything about garage, really. So it doesn't really matter to me. In most of the reviews that I've read of this, it seemed to be British music journalists focusing on this. I don't think that's as important. I think what's really important is the amazing sound that he's able to create. I highly, highly recommend you listen to this song. And then the rest of the album, which I'm going to go through now. The intro is cool. It's like slightly distorted Doppler effect guitar, a tripled voice, really great vocal production on here. He has a lot of different sounds that he can make when he's speaking and he's singing, and the way it works is just great. Kind of a narrative of like doing it to himself, kind of a heartbreak narrative. It builds a lot with him screaming over and over again, saying, "And she held me so close," until eventually these like arpeggiated keyboards jump in at the end, and then some woman, it appears to be that the woman he's singing about is defending herself at the end of the song, which is kind of funny. Then we have the song Bodies, which I've already described. Then a weird interlude with like this church organ going in the back and people talking about still having to work. It feels to me like this is like a conversation, maybe outside of a church, talking about how faith doesn't pay the bills. I can't quite tell. Coming up next, we have two songs, Moonlight 1 and Moonlight 2. Moonlight 1 is just this weird, warped trap beat, just screaming like it's not Takeshi 6ix9ine, right? But it's sort of in that realm of just like yelling, just screaming at the camera, talking about being a blood and being a Crip. And this, in a way, it reminds me a little bit of the album I reviewed last week, which has that sort of like feeling of talking about rap music and using the forms of rap music without actually being it, right? So sort of like ironically using these terms, and I think it's used quite well here. But always this theme of moonlight coming in, blur in a blue light. And so we had the sense of like in the soft side. So we had this like very, very angry kind of rapping, right? Dean Blunt, by the way, is the name of the person who I reviewed last week, the person who is also from England, who made an interesting and self-produced and interesting rap-adjacent album that used those terms. It's dangerous not writing scripts. It's dangerous improvising. I would have gone the rest of the video trying to think, what was the name of that guy? And the whole video would have just suffered so badly. But fortunately, my short-term memory is doing okay. So I do think we could tie together Dean Blunt and this just in that way of saying like, I'm a blood, I'm a Crip, and earlier he talks about like moving bricks and all that. And based on something else I read, he used to be a dental assistant. Okay, so he's not actually saying this is what he's doing. He's posturing as a rap artist with these different forms to say this is what it is, this is what a rap artist is, but really behind it is this vulnerability and the sweetness. Vulnerability, sweetness, and blackness all coming together in one album, mixing together with these themes of faith and questioning whether or not organized religion is only a financial racket. Moonlight 2 is a sort of gentle continuation of the previous. It's a little bit more of a gentle version of the song. It talks about can't feel my jaw. He has a really nice poetic way of saying things that I don't understand. I don't know if I can't feel my jaw. I think it means that he's clenched, I think. I think it means that he feels so much stress that I think that's what that means. Nice kind of auto harmonies, like harmonizing with himself. Talks about, sort of describes the world as a tundra. What do you think when you see me sin? This is one of the times where it seems as though he's talking to God quite often, or maybe talking to his mother, or maybe talking to his friends, and just keep on saying he can't close his jaw, so he talks. I think the idea of not being able to close your jaw is not being able to be relaxed. Just being, am I going to use that for the thumbnail? It's really hard scrubbing through and picking up an image. Next track is called We Ain't. Interesting bird sounds to begin. It's got these great low chords, plucked note by note, almost grunge-like. Actually reminds me a little bit of Kid Cudi's work on Kids See Ghost, the way the guitar work is done here. You actually even had the hiss of the guitar amp. Really nice atmosphere. There's this female vocalist who comes on and says like, we ain't what you are, I is what you need. 11, 11, 11, 11 over and over and over again, which is one of these sort of Pentecostal, modern religious attempts at spiritual awakening. That's what 11:11 means. Doing a lot of religious searching, which is the end of this album, is mostly dedicated to that. Seems the album really is a search for truth, as to how can you be a young black male and be perceived as a human being who is capable of softness and vulnerability, and then how can you be a good Christian who is questioning the Christian church. 22 minutes, okay? I told you it was dense. I'm so staccato with my soul, I'm so legato with my feelings. He mentioned a couple times in interviews that he went to songwriting school, which is very funny. Like he went to a class on how to write songs. And I think he learned a lot, but it's funny because the album's pretty avant-garde. He's not following it doesn't feel like he's following any formula, but it's a nice idea because at the end there's some strings that play staccato and then a flute is very legato. So it seems that it's kind of constantly with this theme. There's the song Circles, which has him speaking in different voices. Wait, who are you? What to do? Who are you? It's kind of goofy, kind of nerdy. I really like it. There's some harp sounds that go in a circle as the song goes circles. And returning a little bit to this theme of black masculinity, big man thing. Again, going back to talking about black bodies, which was previously in the song Bodies. You as a broken black body, just over and over again with this idea. He's in a conversation with himself. The harp is circular, and then that harp slightly changes into the next song, Almost Lost, and then it has a great high synth loop in there, and this organ comes in, and it's nice and calm. Another weird line, which I understand must mean something, but I don't know what it means. The stains on your teeth ain't typical. And the rest of the song is a conversation with Heavenly Father. Again, he's such a great singer. He really is, because he's able to just strain and keep it together. Right? It feels like when you scream as hard as you possibly can, it feels like you're breaking polyps in your throat and just like your veins on your head just start going. Like, it feels like he can sing like that, but in key. It's really nice. It's going on about Heavenly Father. I owe my inhale and exhale to you, but also asks, have you seen me sin? What is it? This crisis of faith with no anger. It's really nice. A very kind of minimalist beat. One of the things he commented on in one of the interviews that I saw was he said that he still thinks that Kanye is the greatest artist alive, or his biggest influence. And obviously I agree. This channel is 100% pro Kanye all the time with no exceptions, except for maybe that one with Lil Pump. No, I'm for that too. But I really like this because it's very clear that if it weren't for Jesus as King, I don't think this album could exist. And I'm excited because every time Kanye does something, he leaves behind him a wake of influence. And people have to just kind of pick it up. And all of a sudden, people start making 808 and Heartbreak style music. And then all of a sudden, they start making Yeezus style music. And now they're going to start making Jesus is King music. And I really like it. This kind of gospel feel, this questioning, modern, hip, like Christian, but not really Christian rap. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like, we're in his service, hoo. It doesn't feel like that. It feels more raw and more real. So there you go. Thunderground Thursday. I really suggest you check out Sipho. It's a very impressive piece of art made by a very agreeable person. I also suggest, I'm going to put some links to those interviews as well. Just because it bugs me that people are doing such hard work and it's not being seen. That's one of the most frustrating things about this channel is the amount of great artists I've reviewed, and it's like, can't they get more? Okay, hopefully that'll work. All right, so until next time, I'm going to, you can't smell, but my wife is making mirepoix. She's frying up some onions and celery and carrots, and I can smell that, but I don't know why. She might be making soup. I don't know. It's very exciting. Okay, until next time, there's the camera.